Okay, let's unpack this. What makes a D&D monster truly unforgettable?
Hmm.
You know, beyond the stat block, the hit points, the claw attacks, what is it that makes a creature kind of linger in your memory? Maybe even haunt your imagination long after the dice have stopped rolling.
That's the secret sauce, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
the difference between like a speed bump in a dungeon and a real story moment.
Yeah.
A great monster feels like a character,
Yeah.
not just an obstacle. It has presence.
Exactly. It taps into something deeper. And today we are taking a deep dive into the art and the science, I guess, of designing your own D&D monsters from scratch.
Yeah, not just reskinning a goblin, right?
Yeah,
Conjuring something truly original for your table.
totally. Injecting that pure, unadulterated sense of the unknown back into the game.
Oh, for sure. When players encounter something they can't just look up in a book, the tension is, well, it's palpable. You can feel it.
Our guide for this deep dive comes from a fantastic resource over at LitRPG Reads, specifically a step-by-step framework put together by Amir Barakat. It's a really thoughtful approach.
It really is. It breaks down what can feel like this huge, overwhelming creative task into, manageable steps. Gives you a pathway from that first little spark of inspiration
Right.
all the way to a fully functional and hopefully memorable creature.
So our mission today is basically to explore this guide, chat through its wisdom, and hopefully equip you with a solid framework for creating your own unique, unforgettable homebrew creatures.
Yeah, think of this as your shortcut to adding some truly original horrors. Or
Huh.
maybe even allies, who knows?
Could be. To your campaign.
Yeah,
It's about weaving this living tapestry, right? Blending the backstory, the visuals, and crucially, some rules-smart stats.
and importantly, this isn't just for, veteran dungeon masters.
Yeah.
Even if you're running your very first campaign, getting the hang of these principles can really elevate your game and make your encounters resonate way more.
Okay, let's jump right in then. The guide kicks off with the absolute core, the conceptual foundation.
Right, where does this thing even come from?
Yeah.
Every monster has to have a seed, right? What's its essence? Instead of just thinking, okay, I need a dragon, maybe think, what kind of challenge do I want this creature to represent?
Good question.
Is it primarily like a cryptic puzzle the players have to figure out? Or is it a brutal juggernaut meant to just grind them down?
Or something sneaky.
Exactly, a subtle mastermind pulling strings from the shadows. Or maybe it's just a complete anomaly, something unpredictable that just defies logic.
And you have to tie that essence into your actual campaign, right?
Right.
Does it fit the theme?
Yeah.
The tone?
For sure. Is it this singular, maybe world-altering boss? Or maybe it's just a weird local legend that fits the vibe of one particular town or region?
That narrative context isn't just flavor text. It totally shapes the monster's role and its whole impact on the story.
Definitely. And where do you find these Starks? Well, the source points to classic places like myths and folklore, which are just overflowing with archetypes. Dark fairy tales can give you those really unsettling vibes. Pop culture references you can twist around. Even just weird environments can spark something. Like what lives in the deepest, darkest part of a fungal forest?
Ooh, creepy.
Or the forgotten levels of some ruined ancient metropolis.
The prompts in the guide itself are fantastic for jumpstarting this process. Like, it suggests, imagine a cursed forest guardian who literally withers anything that asks it for aid.
Whoa, that's not just a combat encounter, that's a moral dilemma right there.
Totally. Or what about a sentient plague that possesses dying creatures?
Oh, wow. That immediately gives you mechanics related to, like infection, spread.
Yeah.
I'm probably a horrifying visual to go with it.
Yeah, definitely. Or a creature that slowly devours memories. That's an encounter that hits maybe intelligence or social skills, could affect player knowledge outside of combat.
That's cool. Or a living shadow only visible in moonlight.
Ooh, tactical puzzle built right in.
Right. Or a clockwork automaton powered by trapped dreams. That just opens up so many questions about its origin, its purpose, maybe even how you might defeat it nonviolently.
These rich concepts are so crucial because they guide everything else, They suggest mechanics, visuals, story hooks. They give the monster a reason to exist in your world. You got to anchor it in your campaign's reality, give it purpose, a history, maybe even a mystery for the players to unravel.
It shouldn't feel random. Yeah, it should feel like an organic, albeit maybe terrifying, part of the world you've built.
And that leads us pretty naturally to the next layer, lore, myth, and motivation.
Yeah, because power isn't just measured in damage dice, right? It's measured in the story behind the monster. What does this thing actually want?
Why is it doing what it's doing?
Exactly. Is it a victim of circumstance somehow? Is it a willing villain? or something more ambiguous, kind of in between?
When understanding its origin story is so key here. Was it summoned by some ancient act of hubris? Is it literally a divine punishment walking the land?
Ooh, spooky.
Right, an artifact from some magical catastrophe gone wrong. Or maybe just a leftover weapon from a forgotten war that's still functional and angry.
And that motivation is paramount because it dictates its behavior, doesn't it?
Totally.
A creature seeking vengeance acts completely differently than one just trying to protect its eggs or its territory or, maybe just trying to find its way home. Even supposedly mindless beasts have instincts you can build into their actions.
The lore should feel intrinsically linked to its abilities and how the players actually encounter it.
Yeah.
If it was imprisoned for centuries, maybe it uses abilities related to chains or sealing magic, that kind of thing.
Makes sense. Or if it's a parasite that hates sunlight, then encountering it during the day versus the night becomes a huge tactical consideration for the players.
The origin prompts in the guide are great fuel for this too. Imprisoned in ancient times, divine punishment, spawn of some cosmic misalignment.
Personification of collective fear from a city. That's cool.
Yeah.
A pact gone horribly wrong, cursed by some deep ancestral betrayal. These aren't just backstories. They're like blueprints for how the monster interacts with the world and the players.
And a well-woven backstory adds serious emotional weight. Right?
Oh, absolutely.
Players might uncover its history, and suddenly that terrifying enemy has this tragic past, which complicates everything. It can lead to moments of unexpected empathy, maybe hesitation.
Yeah, or just surprising player choices. Lore isn't just flavor. It's a driver of player engagement. Makes the monster more than just a sack of hit points.
Totally. Okay, so we have the core idea, we've got the lore, the motivation.
Yeah.
Now, how do we make it look memorable? Step 3, physical design and aesthetic.
This is where you get to paint the picture. The first image players form in their minds is often the one that sticks. What does it look like? How does it sound when it moves? What are those small, maybe unnerving details that hint at its purpose or its history?
You start with the core anatomy. Is it something kind of familiar but wrong? Or complete bizarre fusion of things? How does it move? Does it glide silently, slither unsettlingly, shamble heavily?
Think about iconic silhouettes too, like the multiple eyes of a spider or the distinctive shell of an ankeg. Anatomy isn't just cosmetic, it informs its threat and its movement capabilities.
And the materials and textures, huge for setting mood. Is it made of bone, smoke, writhing roots?
Heavy, clanking brass. Soft, disturbing petals. Each choice creates a distinct feeling. Does it look wrong in a way that just makes your skin crawl?
Or maybe it's hauntingly, tragically beautiful that can be just as unsettling.
Oh yeah. And the sensory details beyond just sight are so powerful too. A creature that shambles with a sound like bone chimes. A chorus of clicking from some unseen swarm. Or worst of all, maybe whispered messages that seem to come from nowhere. Every sense is a tool for tension and immersion.
The visual ideas they list are pure nightmare fuel, in the best way possible. Eyes that never blink, limbs made of smoke that seem to dissipate and reform.
Blood that sizzles on the ground when it spills.
Ugh. Mouths that sing luring, discordant songs. Armor that's pulsing with veins or bioluminescent light.
Wings made of fragile, transparent glass. Scales that perfectly mimic the terrain around it. Roots instead of feet.
Hands with too many joints, bending in ways they shouldn't. Antlers tangled with strange glowing fungi, chains embedded in its flesh.
Shudders slightly. Yeah, okay, those are the kind of details that stick with you long after the session ends.
They create immediate intrigue and emotion, like a gentle voice coming from a monstrous maw or a being of pure light that somehow casts a corrupting shadow.
Right. Design isn't just what it looks like. It's about the feeling it evokes before combat even starts. It's the first visual riddle the players have to solve.
Okay, speaking of combat, we got to put some numbers behind this terrifying vision now. Step 4, challenge, rating, and roll.
Finding that sweet spot for challenge. Super crucial.
Yeah, you don't want the fight to be a total pushover, but you also don't want an accidental TPK, right?
Definitely not. So you got to figure out its main combat role. Is it just a brutal bruiser that hits hard and tanks damage?
Or maybe a clever controller that messes with positioning and actions. A nimble striker zipping around, picking off weaker targets.
Or even a tricky support creature, maybe buffing others or debuffing the party.
CR guidelines are helpful starting points, but they are absolutely not gospel, not set in stone.
Not at all. They try to approximate toughness based on offense, defense, abilities, but it's an approximation. A solo boss needs way more durability or ways to challenge a whole party than a creature designed to show up in a pack.
And context is everything. I mean, is it a lone monster in a bare room?
Yeah, boring.
Or is it part of a pack in difficult terrain with environmental hazards popping off, maybe appearing after the party's already worn down from previous fights? The real challenge rating shifts dramatically based on the whole scenario.
The guide mentions the CR table as a benchmark, CR1 for early level threats or mobs, stepping up to maybe CR5 for a significant early boss, all the way up to CR17 plus for truly mythic, campaign-defining foes. It gives you a ballpark figure to start with.
But, and the guide rightly stresses this, don't let online calculators do all the heavy lifting for you. Your gut feeling and actual play testing are your most important tools here.
Absolutely. Does it feel right at the table? Is it pressuring the players in the way you intended?
Balance isn't about achieving some perfect mathematical equilibrium. It's more like a dynamic dance, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's between putting pressure on the players and giving them satisfying challenges they can overcome through cleverness or teamwork. You adjust based on how it feels during play. Sometimes you got to scale it mid-fight, and that's totally okay.
All right, so with the role and the challenge target kind of set, let's build the engine. Step 5, stat block design.
This is where the rubber meets the road, mechanically speaking. HP, AC, ability scores, speeds, senses. These numbers literally tune the difficulty and define the monster's combat personality.
Right. High HP and AC. That probably means a grinding fight, maybe a war of attrition.
Or a glass cannon hits like a truck but goes down fast if the party can focus fire.
The ability scores should reinforce that flavor we built earlier, too. High strength for the brute, high intelligence for the mastermind, high dexterity for the nimble striker.
But low scores can be interesting too, like a brilliant manipulator who's physically frail, or a massively powerful creature that's easily tricked or outsmarted.
And movement types. Don't just give everything a boring walking speed. Can it slither through tiny gaps, burrow underground, hover silently, climb sheer surfaces?
Yeah, those add crucial tactical dimensions to the encounter. And senses too, dark vision is standard, but what about tremor sense? Sensing vibrations,
Right.
Or blind sight. That dictates how it perceives and hunts, especially in specific environments like fog or darkness.
Thematic twists in the stats are great too, like maybe it's resistant to damage when it's standing in shadows, or it gets advantage on checks in foggy conditions. The guide has some really neat tips here for adding personality directly into the numbers.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Using odd movement types to surprise players. Curving the HP for a multi-stage boss fight so it gets tougher or changes tactics. Letting its AC fluctuate based on some temporary effect or stance.
Pairing its intelligence score with its specific tactics does it fight smart.
Exactly. Giving it senses tied directly to its environment or nature. Granting it disadvantage on certain saves to create an exploitable weakness the players can discover.
Conditional resistances are cool too,
Yeah.
or variable speed based on its health and maybe some other state. Even HP regeneration that's tied to specific thematic conditions, like it only heals if it's near fire or something.
You're marrying the mechanics and the story here, you see. The stats should feel like the monster you've designed. A dark harrier should see in the dark and move silently. A hulking guardian should shrug off blows. The numbers gotta reinforce the fantasy.
Okay, now for the really juicy bits, the stuff that makes it truly unique. Step 6, special abilities and unique mechanics.
This is the lifeblood. Yeah, claws and teeth are baseline. They're expected. But stealing a player's most recent spell slot, or gaining power from their fear, teleporting between shadows, that's the stuff that makes players lean in and go, okay, how do we even deal with that?
Signature abilities are what define the monster's presence and how it challenges players beyond just dealing damage. Does it interact with the environment in cool ways, inflict bizarre status conditions, punish specific player strategies?
You want a mix, ideally. Some direct damage, sure, but also conditions that hamper players, abilities that change the actual battlefield, or even narrative hooks embedded right into the mechanics.
A surprising ability forces players to adapt on the fly, right? And a thematic ability reinforces the lore you've worked so hard to build.
Think about how the monster leaves its mark, maybe literally or figuratively. Some monsters don't just reduce HP, they leave the party shaken, maybe marked by a curse, or even subtly changed in some way. The mechanics themselves should be telling a story.
The ideas listed in the guide are so creative. Stealing a spell slot or a recently cast spell, gaining power as enemies become afraid or take pain.
A creature that's only vulnerable if the players speak a specific truth aloud. That's wild.
Totally. Teleporting via shadows. projecting incredibly convincing illusions, planting parasitic seeds that sprout later.
Absorbing elemental damage to heal itself, causing environmental hazards just by moving around, draining memories, which could manifest as intelligence or wisdom damage, may be temporary.
A psychic pulse that disorients everyone nearby, shape-shifting to mimic an ally to create chaos and paranoia.
Spreading a magical thematic disease, exhaling an aging mist that affects players' stats or even their gear, silencing sound in an area.
Marking enemies to slowly sap their HP over time, gaining resistance to the last type of damage it took that forces players to diversify tactics.
Those are the kind of abilities that make players groan, think, and get really creative with their solutions. And you tie them back to the monster's narrative, right? A cursed creature phases through attacks because its form is unstable. A spiteful spirit inflicts emotional scars because its own torment was emotional.
And the guide makes a smart point. Stay focused. 2 or 3 signature abilities that interact in interesting ways are usually far more memorable and manageable than, like, a laundry list of random powers. Keep the tension high without overwhelming everyone, including yourself as the DM.
All right, now for the really big, important baddies. Just a standard turn isn't always enough to stand up to a full party's action economy, especially at higher levels. Step 7. Legendary and lair actions.
Yes, these are essential tools for making your boss monsters feel like bosses. Legendary actions happen outside the monster's turn, usually at the end of another creature's turn.
Right. They give the boss extra agency, letting it move, make a special attack, or use some iconic minor ability more often. It makes them feel constantly present and threatening, not just waiting for their turn.
And lair actions. Those happen on a specific initiative count, usually 20, and they connect the monster directly to its environment. The terrain itself becomes an extension of the monster's will.
Yeah, walls might sprout teeth, the ground could collapse, the very atmosphere could sap player strength or impose conditions. It forces players to think tactically about the location, not just the creature standing in it.
Crucially, these need to raise the stakes without feeling totally unfair or cheap.
Right, they should enhance the tension, create dynamic moments, not just frustrate players or completely shut down their options. It's a balance.
Ideas for these could be anything from summoning illusory duplicates to sow confusion,
To reshaping the battlefield, causing cave-ins, raising walls of force, triggering environmental hazards like poison gas vents.
forcing involuntary movement, pushing players around, altering the turn order temporarily, causing equipment or magic items to malfunction within the lair.
Draining light or color from the environment, making it harder to see. Summoning minor spirits or minions to distract or overwhelm. Triggering specific environmental effects tied to the monster's theme, like sudden floods or lightning strikes.
Amplifying its minion's power if it has any. Interrupting player spellcasting, a psychic scream that forces tough saves or imposes fear.
These shouldn't be routine, though. Pick legendary actions that fit the monster's core moves and lair actions that make the environment feel like a character in the fight. 1 or 2 legendary actions per round is often plenty.
Yeah, and lair actions shouldn't feel like they happen every single round if it just makes the fight impossibly brutal. Embrace a little restraint to make the ones you do use truly memorable and impactful.
So true. And the context in which the monster appears is just as vital as the monster itself. That brings us to step 8. Encounter design and behavior.
Absolutely. A fantastic monster design can fall totally flat if you just stick it in a boring, empty room. Where does it live? How does it hunt?
Is it always alone? Or does it have creepy hangers-on, minions, or allies? What does the terrain look like? And maybe most importantly, what's the actual objective? Is it just kill it or something more dynamic?
The battlefield itself should be part of the challenge. Treacherous ground, thick fog making ranged attacks difficult, a confined space where grappling becomes terrifying.
Environmental features, collapsing bridges, pools of acid, volatile crystals should feel integral to the fight, not just like set dressing the players ignore.
And rethinking the objective is huge. Maybe the goal isn't even to defeat the creature, but to escape with an important artifact it guards, or disrupt a ritual it's performing.
Survive for a set number of rounds until reinforcements arrive. Protect an NPC. Puzzle combat elements, time pressure, or even moral dilemmas can make an encounter unforgettable, even with a relatively simple monster stat block.
The monster's tactics and behavior should strongly reflect its lore and motivation that you established earlier. An ambush predator uses hit-and-run tactics and hides effectively.
A noble guardian might issue warnings or challenges before attacking, maybe focusing on those it perceives as intruders. A creature driven by fear might try to flee or hide when wounded. Their mood and goals change the entire texture of the encounter.
The guide lists so many cool encounter styles to spark ideas. An ambush that happens not just physically, but maybe in the party's dreams or on the astral plane.
Ooh, nice. A duel fought on a collapsing bridge over a chasm, interrupting some horrifying ritual midcast, a nighttime raid on the party's camp while they're resting.
A chase sequence through crumbling ruins. A multi-floor tower fight where the terrain changes as they ascend. A fight in a fog-drenched maze where visibility is limited.
A silent standoff in a magical library where making noise is dangerous. A timed escape from the monster's collapsing lair. A multi-stage fight where the monster changes forms or tactics.
Puzzle combat hybrids where figuring out a mechanic is key. A battle under some bizarre magical phenomenon like reversed gravity or wild magic surges. A siege defense with waves of enemies led by the monster, or even a social encounter where the monster is trying to manipulate or bargain with the players.
And describe those sensory details. What does the air smell like? Are there strange echoes? How do the shadows behave in its presence? Let the environment itself echo the monster's story and powers. A fire spirit encountered in a scorching foundry feels right. A mind parasite whose lair is filled with disorienting illusions makes perfect sense.
Staging and scripting the encounter elevates the monster from just a stat block on a page to a potential legend in your campaign's story. It's the moment it truly shines.
Okay, so after all that design work, putting it into practice inevitably means you're going to need to tune it, which leads to step 9. Balancing the experience.
This really is more art than science, isn't it? Often leaning into controlled chaos. Your carefully designed monster might turn out to be way too tough or surprisingly weak in practice against your specific party.
Oh yeah, dry runs, even just playing out a round or two yourself against a hypothetical party on paper can help test the core mechanics and pacing beforehand.
And definitely have your adjustment tools ready at the table. You can subtly tweak its HP pool up or down on the fly. Hold back a particularly nasty ability for a round if the party's struggling too much.
Or maybe have reinforcements arrive sooner or later than planned. Small, subtle adjustments can rescue a session that's going sideways without the players even realizing you changed anything.
Watch your players. Are they getting really frustrated by a mechanic that just isn't working or feels unfair? Are they completely ignoring something you thought would be a key part of the fight?
You can adjust its targeting priorities, rotate through its abilities differently, or even offer a subtle hint through environmental description or an NPC shout. Flexible balancing is key to keeping the fun and tension high.
And absolutely revise after the session. Get feedback from your players. What felt challenging in a good way? What felt unfair? What was surprisingly easy for them? Crafting monsters is an iterative process. You get better with every experiment.
For sure. The balancing tips from the source are super practical too, like maybe limit big multi-target area of effect spells right at the start of the fight. Give the party a chance to spread out.
Adjust initiative results slightly. If the monster just happens to roll super high and potentially wipes out half the party in round 1 before they act, that's usually not fun.
Provide a visible tell or warning before a monster uses a really devastating ability, giving players a chance to react or prepare. Stagger its signature powers so they aren't all unleashed at once in an overwhelming alpha strike.
Give the monster an option for in-fight healing or maybe temporary hit point shields, but probably not both for a single foe unless it's truly epic and meant to be a long slog.
Alternate between offense and defense turns or actions sometimes. Grant an exploitable weakness, maybe its AC drops after it uses a certain powerful attack, or it becomes vulnerable to a specific damage type under certain conditions that the players can trigger.
Resist the urge to punish clever player tactics that use the environment or weird strategies in unexpected ways. Reward creativity.
Make legendary actions cost some kind of resource, or only usable after specific triggers, rather than just free actions every round. Be ready to scale HP or resistances up or down based on how much damage the party is actually dishing out. Some parties hit way harder than expected.
Use minions not just for extra damage, but to divert player attention and actions, and try to avoid stun or paralysis effects that lock players out of the game for multiple rounds unless there's a clear way for them or their allies to try and end it. Long stuns can feel really bad.
The goal isn't perfect mathematical balance, it's that feeling, right? Where the party is on the ropes, maybe someone even drops to 0 HP, but they pull it off through teamwork and cleverness. That's memorable.
Yeah, that nearly TPK feeling that still feels fair in retrospect is often the sweet spot. It's a dance between pressure and letting the players feel heroic when they overcome it.
Exactly. Okay, you've done all the design work, the mechanics, the balancing. Now the final touch, step 10. Final polish and presentation.
This is where you make it really sink to the table. A well-formatted stat block for you to reference quickly. A really evocative description ready for the players when they first see it, maybe a quick visual aid.
Yeah.
It takes your strong creation and makes it spectacular in play.
Definitely refine your DM-facing stat block. Follow the official formatting conventions, bolding, italics, clear sections for actions, reactions, etc. It makes it so much easier to run smoothly in the heat of the moment. Summarize complex abilities clearly so you don't have to reread a paragraph mid-combat.
And absolutely write out that player-facing intro. Just a few vivid lines describing what they see, smell, hear, or feel when they first encountered the monster. It immediately builds mood and immersion before you even ask for initiative. You hear a sound like dry leaves skittering across stone, but wait. You're deep underground in a damp cave.
Ooh, chills. And yes, have some kind of visual aid ready if you can. Even a quick sketch you did yourself, a printed paper token, finding a piece of evocative art online that captures the feel. It really helps bring the monster to life for everyone at the table.
The guide lists a bunch of great final prep steps. Give it a truly distinctive and memorable name. Format the stat block properly. Maybe pre-roll initiative for groups of minions to save time. Write down your dramatic intro line so you don't fumble it.
Have a printable stat block or note cards handy. Include little tactical notes for yourself. What's its preferred target? When should it use its big ability? Double-check any tricky rule synergies or interactions.
Prepare any lore snippets or rumor handouts the players might have found beforehand. Have the mini, token, or art ready to deploy. Summarize its legendary and lair actions separately so you don't forget them in the flow of combat.
Even think about sample loot it might carry, or what happens in the immediate aftermath of the encounter. And have alternative reactions ready. What if the players try to talk to it? What could escalate or de-escalate the fight unexpectedly?
Take pride in what you've made. You didn't just pull something off a shelf, you conjured something unique. Something from your own imagination, tailored to your world and your players.
Yeah, it's like a visual riddle, a challenge, a piece of your world's living mythology waiting to be discovered.
Let it loose on your players.
And give it room to scare them, delight them, maybe confuse them, and genuinely surprise them. That's the real magic of homebrew monsters.
Now, the guide goes a bit beyond just the initial creation, which is cool. It talks about keeping things fresh with variant forms and evolutions.
This is such a great idea, especially for recurring villains or maybe signature creature types in your setting. Creating alternate versions keeps the threat dynamic as the party levels up or moves through different environments, stops things getting stale.
Yeah, like a desert version of a creature that uses sand manipulation and heat attacks versus a tundra one with freezing abilities and ice armor.
Or a haunted forest version with ethereal, grasping limbs compared to a deep sea variant with bioluminescence illusions and crushing pressure attacks. These regional adaptations make the world feel more consistent and show how creatures adapt, which is cool world building.
And for a major villain, mythic or ascended forms are fantastic for high-level play, giving them distinct phase changes mid-fight, maybe unveiling entirely new sets of powers triggered by narrative moments or hitting certain HP thresholds.
Oh yeah. A monster that visibly and mechanically evolves becomes a truly legendary adversary that players won't forget easily.
These variants become like warning signs too. Oh no, it's that kind of creature again, but it looks different. What does this one do? It shows how deep the danger runs in your world.
And finally, the guide touches on the joy of sharing and using your monster.
There's something really rewarding about letting others experience what you've created, right? Whether it's just for your own friends at your table or sharing it publicly online as homebrew content.
For sure. And presentation matters if you share it. Document it well, include the lore blurbs that give it context, a clear, formatted stat block that's easy to read, maybe some notes on how you intended to scale it or run it.
If you're writing for other DMs, make it accessible and inspiring. A memorable name, a compelling little lore intro, clear formatting using conventions people recognize, maybe even sample encounter hooks or ideas. Tag it by challenge rating or intended level range so others know when it might fit their game.
And for your own campaign, integrate it seamlessly. Don't just plop it down randomly in a room. Layer its presence into the world beforehand. Use rumors, strange signs, hints of its activity to build anticipation and dread.
Foreshadowing is so powerful for monsters. NPC stories about strange occurrences, victims found with unusual marks, maybe magical items bearing the creature's weird sigil, environmental clues like strange tracks or localized weird weather patterns.
Bardic riddles about a local beast, nightmares or visions the players experience. Maybe mutated, lesser versions of the monsters start appearing first as a warning sign. Sudden magic failures in an area or vanishing caravans hinting at a territorial threat. Traps or curses found in its territory that hint at its unique abilities. Maybe the players interrupt a ritual where its name is invoked.
Always try to lead with the story and the atmosphere, not just the potential combat encounter stats. Building that dread or mystery makes the eventual showdown far more impactful and meaningful.
So that's the guide from LitRPG Reads, step by step. Monster creation really is this incredible blend of art, science, and wonderfully unpredictable chaos.
Yeah, it really is. It allows for moments at your table that no pre-published stat block, however good, could ever quite replicate because it's yours. You're literally bringing something entirely new into existence for your players.
And focus on the impact, not chasing some mythical, perfect, theoretical balance. An evocative, weird, even slightly janky monster can create way more drama, laughter, and unforgettable stories than a sterile, perfectly tuned encounter sometimes.
Be bold with your ideas. Follow that weird instinct, that strange thought you had about combining two different things. Refine it with playtesting, sure, and don't be afraid to adjust on the fly.
It's an ongoing experiment, and that's where the magic truly happens at your table. The best monsters inspire fear, wonder, maybe even pity sometimes, and they bring the world to life in a unique way.
We really hope this deep dive has sparked some cool ideas for now. This guide by Amir Barakat over at LitRPG Reads, hosted by the always chill Paul Bello. A fine fellow indeed. It really is a fantastic resource for bringing your monstrous visions roaring to life.
It really is well put together.
And hey, we'd absolutely love to hear about your favorite homebrew monsters, or what inspires your creations, or maybe what you think you might make using some of these steps. Share them with us in the comments or wherever you connect with the show.
Seriously, the creativity in this hobby is just astounding, and sharing your monsters, seeing what other people come up with, that's a huge part of the fun.
Totally. So with these steps and ideas swirling around in your head now, what unique creature will you create that will truly haunt your players' imaginations?